International trade globalization plays a pivotal role in the growth and development of countries by encouraging specialization, enhancing job creation and poverty reduction, enabling access to a variety of quality and affordable goods, facilitating technological transfers, fostering diplomacy and peace building, and accelerating diversity, cultural exchange, and other forms of globalization, among others. For example, according to the World Bank, between 1990 and 2019, global trade to GDP increased from 37.59 to 56.33%. The economic growth underpinned by this trade moved out over 1 billion people out of poverty. At the same time, the mean global inflation rate fell from 8.06 to 2.21%, leading to a wider access of cheaper international goods. There are several important changes that have occurred to the global trade in the last 3 decades, and this has to a large extent affected the distribution of these gains. I will highlight 3 of them. First, despite impressive growth of world trade to GDP between 1990 and 2007, which averaged 2.8% per year, trade has since taken a beating. It averaged 0.04% between 2010 and 2020. The key factors behind the impressive growth in the former period are falling cost of doing business, which encourage formation and growth of global supply chains, China's entry into the global economy, liberalization of the financial systems, technological advancements, especially ICT, which reduce transport, communication, and other related transactional costs, and proliferation of regional and global trade agreements. The main contributors of the drag in global trade in the latter period are global financial crisis of 2008 to 2010, which severely affected banks' trade financing to firms, and saw reduction in tariff and transportation costs. For example, the simple mean tariff declined by almost half from 15.02 to 8.09% between 1990 and 2005. However, the decline between 2006 and 2020 was only from 7.85 to 5.17%. The other factors are transitioning or rebalancing of China's economic growth model from an export and import-driven one to a domestic consumption-led, rise in protectionism, especially between America and China, technological growth, which has led to the rise of the services sector, rising global economic uncertainties, slowing of the reduction in the cost of doing business following geopolitical tensions and COVID-19 disease, and slowdown in growth in many countries due to structural factors, for example, aging, which has reduced demand, among other factors. Second, East Asia, especially China, has risen as a powerful trade center. This has led to the evolution of lopsided trade. For instance, in 1993, only Hong Kong was China's major import partner. In 2020, China had the largest number of countries in the world as their main import partner, that is, 49. The respective values for exports were 1 and 20, respectively. This has had serious trade balance effects between countries, both neighbors and those far away, leading to the rise of ongoing protectionism measures. For example, consider the recent trade wars between China and India and USA. According to the World Integrated Trade Solutions and World Bank Data Bank, the trade balance between China and USA, with USA as the home country, increased from negative 0.23 in 1991 to negative 2.13% by 2015, which represents an increase of 9.26 times. However, the share dropped to negative 1.71% by 2019 following trade tensions. Similarly, the India's trade balance with China rose from negative 0.01 to negative 2.74% of GDP, a staggering 274 times increase. Third, there is a significant change in the product space across countries, that is, the products imported and exported, more so as a result of technological advancements, especially ICT. For example, between 1995 and 2019, most countries experienced a rapid increase in their demand for transmission apparatus for radio, telephone, and TV, petroleum products, especially oil and gases, medicaments, and iron and steel structures, among others. On the other hand, there has been a drastic reduction in the demand for electrostatic photocopiers, word processing machines, glazed ceramic flags and pavers, photographic films in dolls, books, brochures, and newspapers, and photographic and motion picture films, among others. In 1995, the share of electronics integrated circuits to total exports by China was 0.24%. It ranked position 88 out of 1247 products exported by the country as recorded by the Atlas of Economic Complexity. In 2019, the share had increased to 3.9% and it ranked number 4 in China's top exports. The opposite happened in USA in the same time. Its share of exports of electronic integrated circuits experienced the largest decline from 3.99 to 1.61%, a decline of 2.37 percentage points, making it decline from 4th topmost export product in the country to 9th. This study uses two datasets to analyze the global trade. The first dataset is trade balance from World Integrated Trade Solution, or WITS. The trade balance data had been measured in USD and not as a share of GDP. I thus collected GDP data in current USD prices from the World Bank database and used it to compute the trade balance as a share of GDP. The dataset also contains the shares of import and exports of every country to the other. The second dataset was obtained from the Atlas of Economic Complexity by the Harvard Dataverse. This dataset contains the share in percent of exports and exports of around 1,300 specific products for every country between 1995 and 2021. Although various aspects of analysis can be conducted using these datasets, including sectoral and product-level analysis, this study analyzed only 4 areas: evolution of trade balance or imbalances between countries, changes in top trading partners, trades in top and bottom 3 products in each of the given 10 sectors, and changes in exports and imports of 1,200 products between 1995 and 2019. As you will realize, the bulk of analysis of this project focuses on exploration of products, import and exports, and not trading partners and trade imbalances. This is because such an analysis gives more insights into the product-level insights and better decision-making and trade policy formulation at the very micro level. Knowledge of this subject is important for making informed decisions, understanding the ongoing global trade disputes, identifying key trade patterns, accessing trade imbalances and thus implementing measures to combat them, exploring whether trade agreements have had any significant effect on the share of a country's imports and exports. For example, that between El Salvador with the USA in 2006 can help businesses in identifying market opportunities, more so those desiring to expand production or enter into given markets, helps governments, policymakers, and other stakeholders to gauge whether they are gaining or losing competitiveness in a given product or sector, enables them to identify the key exports and import products that drive economic growth and development, and assist in identifying import dependencies for long-term planning, for example, boosting local production and thus expanding employment creation and promoting sustainable economic development. Welcome, I'm James, an economist and a data analyst from Amelia Insights. Let's have an overview of this project and then dive in to explore the implication of the above 4 aspects of global trade. The project is divided into 4 pages. Page 1 shows the bilateral trade between countries, and it's here that we shall examine the differences in export and import shares and trade balances between countries. Page 2 shows the top 20 import and export partners. Page 3 shows the trades in the shares of import and export of top and bottom 3 products that have experienced the largest and smallest changes between 1995 and 2019 in terms of both changes in shares to total and ranks. And page 4 is the presentation. The year 2019 was chosen as it is the most recent stable year and whose data is available. We can also navigate through these pages using the previous and next buttons. Notice that the count of page number is also updating as we navigate through the different pages. Back to page 1. There is a select input at the top reading select home country. When we click it, we see a list of 4 countries whose trade we can examine over the years. Let's select one country, say China. When we do so, another select input reading select away country populates. This input allows us to examine the trade between the home country and the selected away country. Where there is enough data, we show the two-way trade, that is, between the home country and the away country, and between the away country and the home country. Let's now select away country as Mexico. The desaturated cyan color shows the shares of exports to total of the home country to the away country, while the pitch puff indicates the shares of imports of the home country from the away country. In the present case, the first figure shows the shares of Chinese exports to and imports from Mexico, while the second one shows the shares of Mexico's exports and imports with China. The bold continuous line shows the differences in the shares of exports and imports between the two countries. The dotted line represents the trade balance to GDP. I will now select another away country, say India. You will notice that each of the line has three different shades: blue, red, and sade brown. The blue line indicates the observations in the years when the country experienced a positive trade balance or trade shares with the other country. The red one, the negative values, and the sade brown one, the years when the values fluctuated between negative and positive ranges. The three distinct colors allows us to quickly observe and understand the changes in the trades in the entire period. On page 2, we can see a select input reading select trade pattern. There are two options under it to select top 20 export or import partners. Let's select top 20 export partners first. When we do so, another select input appears that prompts us to select one of the three options. We can examine any country's top 20 export partners by year. We can track the evolution of a country's top export partners in many years. That is, many years because different countries have data for different periods, and the growth of top 20 export partners for a country in 2019, but now examined over time. The three select options allows us to visualize the same information, but in three different ways. For the second and third options, we are examining the growth in the export share for the same countries over time. In all the three cases, I either examined top 20 countries or countries whose exports or import shares were greater than or equal to 0.1. Thus, you will notice that some graphs will have less than 20 countries. Let's first select top 20 export partners by year. Another select input appears and it prompts us to select a country. Let's select USA and examine the evolution of its top 20 export partners over time using a racing bar chart. When we do so, two buttons appears on the right hand side, one reading start and the other pause resume. The start button is used to start the animation and the pause resume button is used to start and pause the animation, as we shall see shortly. You will also note that the bars have two distinct strokes, blue and red. The red stroke indicates that the selected country's export shares or import, as we shall see shortly, with this country decreased between 1995 and 2019. The blue border or the blue stroke indicates the opposite. Notice that for the case of USA, only Mexico, China, and Brazil experienced an increase in the shares of USA exports in this time. The blue dotted line shows China, and it was singled out as it has dominated global trade in the last 2 decades. Therefore, we can be able to easily examine its growth clearly among other countries. The labels indicate the export shares to a given country and the rank. For example, for USA in 1991, we can see that the shares of exports to China were 1.49% with a rank of 14. When we click start, the animation starts. The two buttons also change their names to start over and pause. When we click pause, the animation pauses. When we click start over, we begin from the mean year, which in this case is 1991. I slowed the updates animation frequencies to only 500 milliseconds so that we can be able to clearly see the changes. Otherwise, we can increase the speed of the updates, but it will become harder to visualize the changes due to short annual time series. Notice by 2020, USA's exports to China had increased to 8.72% with a rank of 3. Just show that this works for any selected country. I will now select any country at random, and the top export partners will show for the selected country in the mean year, which can then be animated by clicking start or pause resume. I will now select the second option under select trade pattern, that is top 20 export partners since mean year, and then select USA, the country we examined before. I'll then click start to begin the animation, although we can also do the same using the pause resume button. Here, you can clearly see a significant growth of USA's exports to China, Mexico, and Brazil, and reduction to the other countries, especially Canada and Japan. I will select the third option, 20 export partners in 2018 for USA, and examine how they have evolved over time. This time, I will start the animation using the pause resume button. Notice that India, China, and United Arab Emirates had emerged among the top 20 export partners for USA by 2019, yet they were not in 1991. I'll now select top 20 import partners in the first select input, top 20 import partners by year in the select input, and select United Kingdom as the country of interest. Notice that in 1993, the share of UK's import from China was 1%, and the country ranked number 18 among top UK's import partners. We will click Start or pause Resume and see the evolution of the main import trading partners with time. Notice that by 2020, China has grown to become the most important import partner for UK, with the latter importing a share of 11.9% from the former. I will now select top 20 import partners since many and select another big country, say Mexico. We can see that in 1990, the share of Mexico's import from USA was the largest at 67%, while that of China was 0.79%. If we start the animation and observe what has been happening over time, we see that by 2020, Mexico's imports from USA had declined to 44%, and that of China had risen to 19%. The USA still remains the major import partner for Mexico, but China's rank improved from position 13 to 2, replacing Germany, which declined from position 2 to 5. Finally, I now select top 20 import partners in 2019 and select another big economy, this time in Africa, say Nigeria or South Africa. I will select South Africa. Pay attention to China, which ranked position 12 as the most important import partner for South Africa in 1992 with a share of 1.24%. We can click Start and begin the animation. Notice the shrinking of the share of South Africa's imports from USA's UK, Japan, and Germany as China's share grew. We can observe that by 2020, the country had become the most important import partner for South Africa with a share of 20.76%. As with the exports, I will now select several countries at random and show that the visualization works for any country that is selected. We can then move to the third page. This page shows the top and bottom 3 products that have experienced the largest changes between 1995 and 2019 in terms of percentage points or share of exports and imports to total and rank. We first select a trade direction, import or export. We can first choose exports. Another select option appears and we can select the type of change that we need to observe, either the changes by percentage points or the changes in ranks. Notice that the two are different and they give different but related conclusions about the changes. We will first select percentage points. A third select input appears and we select a country of our choice. Here, we have world followed by income regions and specific countries. We can select world first. A fourth select input appears and prompts us to select sector. We have 10 sectors in total. Let's select electronics. The green lines shows the top 3 most improved products, while the red lines shows the least improved products. When I hover, a tooltip appears and we can observe the top 3 products in the electronics sector and the bottom 3. We can see that the top 3 most improved products are transmission operations for radio, telephone, and TV, electronics integrated circuits, and electronic boards. The changes in the share of exports of these products worldwide between 1995 and 2019 was 0.33, 0.16, and 0.12 percentage points, respectively. We can also note that the electronic products which have experienced the largest decline in the world are reception apparatus for radio broadcasting, electrical apparatus for less than 1 kV, and the parts of radios, telephones, that is, the large-line telephones, and the TVs. Let's now select agriculture sector. We see that frozen fish, excluding fillets, have had the largest increase, followed by other oilseeds and soybeans. Banana and plantains, copra and coffee experienced the largest declines. I now go over the other sectors so that we can have a feel of what has been happening at the global level. When we switch to chemicals, we can see that medicaments and serums and vaccines recorded the largest increase in the said period, that is between 1995 and 2019. Notice that this is even before COVID-19 pandemic. In machinery sector, medical equipment and orthopedic equipment topped the list and so on. Metals, then minerals, then services, stone, textiles, and vehicles. Let's briefly repeat this, but using changes in rank instead of percentage points. Note that the negative changes in ranks indicate improvement. For example, a rank of 20 in 2019 minus a rank of 40 in 1995 yields a change of rank of negative 20. We will still use the world data. Agriculture, electronics, machinery. Here, I was particularly worried about the increase in exports of other firearms, which has risen or improved by 78 ranks. Metals sector, minerals, services, stone, textile. Please take note of the wigs as one of the most improved products in the textile sector in the world. And vehicles. I will now repeat the above process, but for imports. We will begin with the change in percentage points. Agriculture, chemicals, electronics, machinery, metals, minerals, services, stone, textile. We can do the same for the changes in rank now. Since it is impossible to illustrate the above trade using all countries, I will briefly show the trends in top and bottom 3 import products by sector in 4 big representative countries or economies. That is Argentina in South America, the United States in North America, China in Asia, Australia in Oceania, and South Africa in Africa. After this, we will move on to the next section where I will present more product level analysis of the above data. I then examine the number of countries which have increased, decreased, or retained their shares of exports and imports of about 50 specific products between 1995 and 2019. Let's begin with exports. For example, we can see that 44 countries reduced their exports of industrial monocarboxylic fatty acids, 192 of them registered an increase and 2 reported no change. Other products which recorded a significant increase in export share are transmission apparatus for radio, telephone, and TV, electrical goods, makeup preparations, orthopedic appliances, instruments for physical or chemical analysis, other articles of iron or steel, and gold, among others. When we go to the bottom of the list, we see that the products which have experienced the largest decline in export shares are tapes, cassettes, records, and compact discs, glazed ceramic flags and pavers, dolls, low heights of bovines or equines, leadable wheeled toys, dolls, carriages, motion picture films, electrostatic photocopiers, photographic films in rolls, and low cotton, among others. Let's particularly focus on dolls. Of the 189 countries that traded in dolls, note that 182 of them reduced their export shares of them, 17 increased their export shares, and no country maintained its 1995 share values. We will be discussing the implications of these changes shortly. Let's now turn our attention to changes in imports by specific products. Here, we see that products like unglazed ceramic flags and pavers, transmission apparatus for radio, telephone, and TV, other frozen vegetables, serums and vaccines, walking sticks, diagnostics or laboratory reagents, other made-up articles, wood, charcoal, wigs, and orthopedic appliances, among others, recorded the largest increase in demand. Going to the bottom of the table, we find that the products with the largest decline in import demand are electrostatic photocopiers, word processing machines, glazed ceramic flags and pavers, readable wheel toys, dolls, carriages, photographic films in rolls, articles of leather for technical uses, photographic paper, tapes, cassettes and records and compact discs, motion picture films, and still image projectors, among others. I then examine the top 1 products which have registered the largest increase and decrease in its shares of exports and imports by sector for all countries. Think of it this way. A given number of countries documented a largest rise in exports of a specific product in a specific sector, but at the same time, there are countries which recorded a largest decline in the same product in the same sector. We begin with the exports. I have sorted the data by sector and by products which have had the largest export share changes. For example, we see that in the agricultural sector, 7 countries witnessed the largest increase in food preparations not elsewhere classified, but 1 country recorded a decline, and so the difference is 6. The respective figures for frozen fish excluding fillets are 10, 4, and 6. Notice that in the agricultural sector, most countries faced a decline in their exports of coffee, woodson lengthwise, and crustaceans compared to countries that reported their increase. Also, observe that if we sum the number of countries that have had a decrease or an increase in that particular sector, say agriculture, we get a total number of countries that is 239 in this case. For the chemicals, we find that the products that have documented the largest export changes are medicaments, packaged packing lids and serums, and vaccines. The products which have reported the smallest positive change in exports are nitrogenous fertilizers, natural rubber, mixed fertilizers, and soap. This could either indicate that the import demand for these products have reduced, or countries are making these products locally or domestically. For each of the other sectors now, I will briefly go over them. Take a look. Before we examine the same scenario for imports, let's sort this data by the difference and see the products that have experienced largest changes in demand, both positive and negative. we can observe that the top 10 products, regardless of the sector, which have had the largest increase in demand are gold, transmission apparatus for radio, telephone, and TV, medicaments, packaged, parts of other aircraft, medical instruments, petroleum oils, refined ferrous waste and scrap, travel and tourism, insulated electrical wires, structures and their parts of iron and steel, and petroleum gases. We can also note that the top one product which has had the largest increase in export share is gold, with 60 countries increasing its exportation and 9 countries registering a decline, and hence the difference is 51. I will now switch to imports and quickly repeat the same. Take note of the products which have registered the largest changes, both increase and decrease in import demand. Similar to the exports, we will now sort the data by the differences and examine the top 1 products which registered the largest increase. These are transmissions operation for radio, telephone and TV, petroleum oils refined, packaged medicaments, structures and their parts of iron or steel, ICT, trunks or cases, other knitted fabrics, motorcycles, parking lids, food preparations not elsewhere classified, and petroleum gases. Having conducted this analysis, we will now discuss the implications of the growing trade imbalances, changing partnerships, and evolving products. Implications of growing trade imbalances, changing partnerships, and evolving products on global trade imbalances can lead to economic vulnerability when countries are exposed to supply chain disruptions and price fluctuations. This can cause shortages of critical goods and services and loss of jobs and opportunities. Thus, local producers need to be incentivized to increase domestic production to offset loss of employment and invest in sectors and industries with high export potential. It causes accumulation of debts as countries need to finance their imports. It is associated with rise of protectionism policies when deficits are perceived as unfair or unsustainable, for example, between USA and China. This raises the need to increase transparency in trade deals to avoid unfair advantages. Persistent trade imbalances may indicate that a country is facing structural problems that hinder her export growth and thus needs to be addressed. These include low productivity, inefficient resource allocations, and low savings. A long-term solution to this problem involves addressing the structural factors that hinder the country's ability to change their production structure and consequently lead to persistence of trade imbalances. These include improving technological capabilities, enhancing labor productivity, investing in education and skills development, and reducing production costs, among others. On changing trading partners. Changing economic dominance. Economic power is shifting to Asian countries. This challenges the dominance of traditional economic powers like the United States and the European nations, which can lead to geopolitical tensions, for example, due to massive job losses and competition for resources and markets. To minimize this, global cooperation and diplomatic efforts are essential for the benefit of everyone. This can be achieved through transparent trade agreements, promoting economic dialogue, and fostering partnerships to ensure global stability and shared prosperity. Changing global power also presents new opportunities for both importers and exporters, investors and businessmen. Shifting technological transfers, for example through FDI, imply faster technological catch-up. This will lead to a more balanced global economy. Need for continued regional integration initiatives. The world is highly integrated through imports and exports. Countries should therefore use that opportunity to foster and strengthen their regional integration and cooperation initiatives, for example, through trade agreement and infrastructural development. This will enhance further trade flows and impact lives positively. To this end, regional integration initiatives like the European Union, Mercosur in South America, the Asian Free Trade Area, and the African Continental Free Trade Area, among others, are reshaping trade partnerships by promoting economic cooperation and reducing trade barriers within specific regions. On evolving products, governments should diligently oversee the products they heavily import, with the objective of substituting them with the locally manufactured alternatives and mitigating corruption, especially given the substantial financial stakes involved. For instance, products like energy resources, specifically petroleum, and structures and parts made of iron or steel, crucial for infrastructure development, demand attention. This strategy can yield significant cost savings and foster job creation within their borders. Take, for instance, the substantial imports of petroleum, which underscore the critical role of energy in a nation's economy. It is imperative to countries to invest in research and diversification towards cleaner and renewable energy sources, and thus reduce their dependencies on such imports. Not only would this action result in substantial cost savings primarily spent on importing petroleum-related fuels, but it would also contribute to healthier pollution-free environment. The ongoing efforts by many countries to embrace electric vehicles represent a positive step and should receive active support from governments. One way to support this transition is by providing subsidies to local manufacturers, thus promoting adoption of electric vehicles and reducing reliance on imported fuels. Take another example of coffee. The shares of coffee exports have significantly reduced in the last 3 decades. By tracking the demand for products over time, governments will thus understand recent trends, diversify and therefore reduce economic risks, while increasing resilience to global market changes. Business persons should frequently track the products that are gaining or losing demand in order to understand whether to invest in them or not. For example, increasing demand for makeup preparations and wigs imply a rising global beauty industry. On 15th August 2020, The Economist also presented an article showing how wigs demand had increased in Nigeria. This is consistent with our current findings. Let's switch to Nigeria and see how the demand for wigs have changed over time. Sure enough, the importation of wigs have substantially risen in the country, both when we use the percentage change and rank measures. The same is also the case when we use the rank measure in the world. This area therefore presents a good opportunity for those wishing to venture into this business. Nevertheless, note the increase in demand for products like wood charcoal, despite the concerted global efforts over time to switch to cleaner energies. Observe that 192 countries increased their wood charcoal imports, while only 36 reduced. This does not imply that entrepreneurs should invest in this business. Rather, it implies that many countries still rely on dirty energy, and there is need for better alternatives. There is need for better alternative renewable and cleaner energy sources like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power to conserve environment. Need for countries to adopt technology, especially ICT, as the world is becoming more and more technologically driven. To this end, countries should invest in education and skills to create a workforce that can compete effectively in global market through the production of highly valued goods and services. The expansion of ICT also implies rising access to information as a result of expanding access to media and telecommunication services. This has both economic and political implications. From an economic point of view, it has led to increased employment creation, including breaking geographical job barriers, business transactions, innovativeness, rise in education access, and expansion of markets. From a political perspective, it has led to greater transparency and accountability in governance. We are also likely to experience more of these changes in the future, and thus we should brace for this revolution. Policymakers should also focus on fostering innovation and research and development in technology-related sectors to reduce dependency on foreign technology products. Address healthcare challenges. Many countries have experienced a rapid increase in the importation of packaged medicaments. This suggests that proper healthcare has become a global challenge. There is need to understand why the world is becoming sicklier, perhaps due to aging population and lifestyle and chronic diseases. There is therefore an urgency by countries to promote preventive ways to minimize these diseases and investment in better healthcare infrastructure, while at the same time note the decline in demand for dolls, rideable wheel toys, dolls carriages, and the increase in demand for medicaments, walking sticks imply huge demographic changes. Governments should therefore promote local production and affordability of healthcare products for the elderly to ensure that they have quality life in their old age. Finally, as asserted before, there is need for better global cooperation in trade between countries to solve the above challenges together, as some countries may not have the competitive advantage in producing some products locally, for example, energy and ICT. This could be due to some structural factors like differences in resource endowment, skills gap, and differing production costs. In conclusion, this analysis underscores the role of global trade in fostering global well-being. Since it is impossible to function in isolation, it is crucial to promote fair trade practices that benefit all parties. Continuous monitoring of ever-evolving dynamics of international trade is essential. By staying informed about changing trade partnerships, product dynamics, and trade imbalances, countries can adapt their strategies to maximize their economic potential. In our next discussion, we will explore and gain new insights into top killer diseases in the world. Until then, goodbye for now.